Hey guys, welcome back to my watercolor channel, and today I show you how to paint a apple. I divide the paper in 3 sections, so the golden rule, and then I start to draw the apple. It's like a ball, but at the bottom is a little bit cut off, and the position is basically somewhere on the right, which is slightly still in the middle, but going to the third of the paper. And I add some like a piece of apple there as well, so it kind of gives a nice touch for the composition, and some seeds. So it's always interesting to add different parts of an apple or of an object, especially if you have fruit. So it attracts attention of the viewers to have different elements. Then I start to prepare my paints. So I use some of the lemon yellow and some of the cadmium red to have a really nice red for the apple, which is quite fitting. And then I use some of the lemon yellow and some of the cobalt blue to have a really nice green. I use a very big brush, so my first layer is relatively light in color, and I use the yellow first and then just adding some of the red that I have mixed before. I have not wetted the paper before, so I try to work a little bit faster. I have to mention as well that on my apple I have divided into different sections, so I have an idea where to add the roundness. But yes, I add some green to the apple. By the way, my paper is of a very low quality, so I wanted to try it out as well and make a video of it, and it surprisingly works quite well. The red that I have added here now is some of the crimson red, so it's kind of really having a nice touch of pinkish colors, and it's much darker than the previous mixes there. But I stopped working on my apple here because it's kind of like getting dry really fast because of the quality of the paper. I continued with the segment of the apple and added basically the same color, but now I add some of the green to the leaf, which is still attached to the stem of the apple. And then adding a very light green color to the background already. So I will darken the background later on, but I just want to have an idea and which colors to add, as well as having a little bit of a wet to wet motion here. Remember to press the brush quite tightly to the paper so the paints are spreading nicely and everything is mixed nicely together. What I also really like to do is to add the colors that I use for the main object to the background, so it's kind of like balancing a little bit the painting here. Underneath the apple I have a cloth, so I add a nice cobalt blue, very light in color, and I don't want it to be too strong because I will add later on also a shadow, and it really makes nice distinguishment between the apple and the cloth as well. Now he had more of a brown and green color, so everything is nicely mixing together. With this first layer I try to add already a contrast between those different segments. So where's the apple on the background, and then where's the table where on which the main object is sitting. I add a little bit of yellow ochre to the seeds, and then I continue to mix a really nice red color for the apple. I have waited till everything has dried, so it's really important to add the second layer a little bit later on. I usually wait that the first layer dries quite naturally, so I kind of like decide what to do and where do I want to add the paint, but of course I have a sketch ready beforehand. I added kind of this orange red there, and then playing around with a darker red as the crimson red, and then as well as adding a little bit of a covered blue and a darker green, so it's kind of like in a shadowy area of the apple, and I wanted to have it darker. A tip here is basically to work in the directions of the roundness of the apple, so it really kind of looks it looks round, and not just adding a straight the paint or having straight brush strokes, so really kind of like working with the shape of the apple, and then adding some of the darker color around where the stem of the apple is, because it's kind of like a shadowy area as well, so the direct light is not reflected there. And then continuing with the segments, we're adding a bit of a dark green and some of a yellow, deep yellow, but then as well of the red. So with the second layer, it's kind of adding more of a mid-tone, and there aren't really that sharp shapes to be seen yet, but it's slowly getting there. Then working with the leaf on the stem, I wanted to have a really nice green, so I actually used the yellow, lemon yellow green, and with some covered blue. Of course you can use some other blues, and then also using some radiant green here and mix them nicely together. You can see that's rather abstract at the moment. I add a nice brownish green onto the stem, and then added some indigo blue as well to the brown, and it's kind of like making much more darker. What I really like to do is adding another light layer to the paper or to the cloth where the apple is sitting, so it kind of gives more structure. It's quite important that this layer is really light. Then what I like to do is to add the reflection, kind of like a shadow of the apple onto the cloth, but I use the same colors that I have used for the apples. It's maybe not as realistic because it's not reflecting that well, but it gives a nice touch to the painting. I continue adding darker colors around the cloth, so it's kind of now start to work with the shadows area, start to paint to mix really dark colors, so it's kind of like some of the covered blue, crimson red, and then some of the yellow. I wanted to have like a very, also you can add some indigo blue. I wanted to have a really dark color, so, and not very bright in for example bright in blue or bright in green, so it's kind of like grayish, and adding it as a background. And the reason why is because I want the left side of the apple being really emphasized, so I need a strong contrast between the background and the area of the apple, which is the light is reflected from. Then I continue with the apple. So I have decided to add another layer using a big brush, so it's flowing nicely downwards. The idea here is basically just to emphasize now the shape, so having a little bit more focus on what the shape of the apple actually looks like, and where are the shadows, where do I need to add more darker colors, and they mixing nicely together. So I have added some of the color that I have used for the background now onto the apple as well, which is kind of mixing with the red together. Then adding a light shadow there and still emphasizing the redness of the apple. Then guiding with the brush the background paint more downwards towards the apple, and it's kind of giving like a really nice flow, so I avoid to have too many hard edges in the painting, although I prefer to emphasize the different layers. I focus now adding just the details, so the painting is nearly done, and adding colors to the seeds as well as color to the segments, and emphasizing the stem of the apple, so it's much darker. But then I want to have another layer as well onto the table where the apple is sitting, and adding some of the brownish color, so it gives a really nice warm touch. But with the shadow of the apple, I wanted to have a bluish color, so it's more of a cobalt blue, and mixed with the reddish colors, so it's a bit purplish. But when adding it onto the segment, because the shadow is kind of like casted onto the segment as well, and it gives a nice connection between those two objects, I added a little bit of yellow ochre, so it's slightly green, but it really fits nicely together. And here I add more of a color there, mixing more of the red. Then more shadow which is the cast shadow from the leaf, which is reflected onto the apple. It doesn't look really perfect. And then adding more color to the segments, as well as some green underneath the leaves, which are more onto the side, which I decided to emphasize as well. So adding more darker colors of iridium green. Then underneath the seeds, I have also some of the shadows, so I want to emphasize that they are sitting, and it gives a nice touch. And then deciding where to add more of a layer. Where the stem of the apples, it's slightly pale, so it kind of needs more of a dark color, and I add the same blue that I have added before. Basically now it's just adding the final touches to the apple, kind of like really just to emphasize the shape, as well as adding some more of the pure colors, for example such as cadmium red. And some orange. And if it feels like, oh, there's too much paint there, so I just take it off with some water. But that was it. So thank you for watching and remember to subscribe. Bye.